really driving the future of IT? How are leaders staying secure, efficient, and ahead of change? Welcome to the Beyond the Firewall podcast, powered by HubTech, where we go past the headlines to talk with technology leaders, industry experts, and IT practitioners shaping how we work, live, and lead. Let's get into today's episode.
Episode of Beyond the Firewall podcast, powered by HubTech. I'm your host, Adam Schaefer, and today we're unpacking a topic that is critical to the systems that power our world, operational technology, or OT. OT runs the physical processes behind manufacturing lines, hospitals, utilities, transportation systems, smart buildings, and increasingly, it's intersecting with IT in ways that create new possibilities and new risks. To help us break this down, we've invited our friends from Acronis. So let me introduce the guests joining us today. First, we have Chris Daggett, Director of Managed Services and Security at HubTech, and also our co-host. Second, we have Pat Hurley, Vice President and General Manager of Americas at Acronis. Pat is a veteran technology executive with over 17 years at Acronis, leading one of the industry's most recognized brands in data protection, backup, cyber resilience, and more. He's an expert in scaling enterprise and MSP go-to-market strategies, and he spent his career helping organizations stay secure and productive in a rapidly evolving digital landscape. And lastly, Ryan Davis, Senior Director of Enterprise Sales at Acronis, who leads global teams supporting the world's largest commercial accounts and major OEM partners. Ryan brings a unique frontline view into how the biggest enterprises are approaching OT, IT convergence, cyber protection, and digital modernization. With Pat and Ryan, we're going to explore what OT really is, how it integrates with IT, why it matters to every industry, what organizations must do to keep their operations safe, resilient, and future ready. So with that, guys, let's jump in. How's it going, everybody? Thanks for joining today. It was a long intro, but guys, before we go into it, did I miss anything on your awesome introductions?
I think you covered it all. Yeah, you could have said Pat Hurley sales. That would have probably summed it up pretty easily.
No, you guys are the best. We want to make sure everybody knows who you are. So with that, let's get into it. I mean, I think the biggest thing is, and I didn't really understand it before I started getting involved and hanging around with Chris, but you know, Pat, can you just help us define what is OT and what does it mean? What's the difference between that and IT?
Sure. So the way I look at it is OT really refers to kind of the manufacturing of widgets. So the hardware, the software systems that monitor and control the physical devices and processes that exist out there in the world. If you compare that to what you might call traditional IT, I look at that as like managing data, managing business applications. Operational technology is more focused on the operation of and successful operation of machinery, industrial equipment, critical infrastructure, right? They're the backbone of what you guys see on a day-to-day basis operating in the world today. Production lines, utilities, smart buildings, really ensuring that physical processes run safely, they run efficiently, and run reliably at the end of the day.
So it is IT, but it's really the building blocks of these smart buildings. It's really the processes that are happening in the background. And so Ryan, from an enterprise and OEM perspective, how are the largest companies thinking about OT today? I mean, like do they even think about it in their world, or is it something that you talk to them about?
Well, they're definitely thinking about it more and more. And a lot of that is driven by the regulatory environment that is constantly changing and now bringing attention to this area of the business that previously might have been a little bit of a black box. But, you know, to your comment on it, it's like IT, but, you know, Rob Lee has a really good distinction around IT are the systems that help you manage the business. OT is why you're a business. So, you know, with the whole IT OT convergence concept, it's starting to make the environments look similar, but OT is everything that's involved in the production, whether it's the IoT, which may be simple sensors, or supervisory control systems that actually monitor and manage the processes themselves. So As I alluded to earlier, from an enterprise perspective, the OEMs are the ones that are typically providing these systems. But from an enterprise perspective, historically, there was a little bit of kind of a black box type perspective. Hey, we'll have our key automation supplier manage that for us. But as the regulatory environment is changing, and you're starting to see things like in Europe, they introduced the CRA Cyber Resilience Act. The U.S. have had some regulation from an FDA perspective, or NERC CIP in bulk power, where now they're requiring businesses to have plans, to have programs, to have disaster recovery plans, to have proactive risk management and cybersecurity. And that's forcing large enterprises or even up to medium-sized businesses to wrap their arms and have programs where they're actually managing these environments proactively. So it's been a really good change over the last few years.
So they have to have a written plan too? Is that what this is about too, for these regulations?
It really depends on the regulation. So NERC CIP is for bulk power. So if you're like an oil and gas company or you're a power utility, then yes, they need to have a written disaster recovery plan that they then follow. NERC CIP, I don't remember the number of controls, 11, 12, it's changing. But they're very peculiar, and it extends everywhere from cyber, which might be cybersecurity, it might be business continuity, but also to like physical security. How do you get access to the building and perimeter security? So, and again, I mentioned FDA, that would be tied to really anything that's being put in the human body, whether it's food and beverage or whether it's pharmaceutical. So those regulations might look a little bit different than if you're, a toy company, right? Manufacturing some consumer products. But in addition to the regulatory environment, we're seeing current events that drive investment and drive attention in this area. And I'll point to two examples. Jaguar Land Rover, their production was impacted for months. They actually had to get like a bailout from the UK government related to a cyber incident. And currently ongoing in Japan, Asahi, a very large brewery or distilling company, they make one of the most popular beers in Japan. Their production is still impacted, tied to a cyber event. So, the regulatory environment has really at scale started to drive activity and drive investment and focus in this space. But we're also seeing these sort of outages that prompt industries to start taking action. So, NotPetya was a good example, I think 2017, that drove a lot of investment. But then you see, hey, there hasn't been as big of a large scale event over the years. And then things like Jaguar Land Rover and Asahi really galvanize industries to take action to make sure that they're not the next.
Yeah, no, I heard a lot about the Japanese brewery. They were taking orders on the phone and writing them on paper. They were struggling to get the orders out. It was, I mean, they figured out how to manually do it, but it was painful. And so Chris, I mean, you talk to a lot of clients, both public sector and private sector all day long. What do they know about OT? What do they think about OT? And what are they not understanding about OT that you're trying to bring to their attention?
So it's really important to understand OT and how to secure it appropriately. Many folks refer to OT as anything on the plant floor, but there are definitely some common gaps there. It's thinking a basic firewall equals segmentation. It doesn't. You actually need to break things down into zones and conduits, meaning security domains, and then how the data is moving from point A to point B. Because typically those OT environments are air gapped and locked down. So understanding how to communicate and connect to them is super important. Many assume that OEM networks are secure by default. Many manufacturers, just like our regular IT environments, are they release patches and things like that. And there are security considerations that you need to take into account. Secure configurations are super important. Making sure you have backups of those secure configurations in the event of, some downtime is critical. But essentially, you need to treat availability like it's uptime. OT downtime equates to production loss and safety risk. As Pat and Ryan had alluded to, these are the systems that make the world go round. So if there's any kind of downtime to them, they have a direct impact on many day-to-day things that we take for granted. And another critical gap is not realizing, asset visibility. That's step zero. You need to understand everything, every asset that's in your OT environment and how it's communicating. So, to Pat's point, IT and OT are very, they're different things, and they need to be treated as such.
So is OT harder to secure than IT? I mean, is it more complicated to make sure that you have the security in place for this?
So if you think about it, Adam, right? If in a typical IT environment, all right, we'll take security patching, for example. The desktops, servers, things like that. We typically will put these on a regular cadence and schedule maintenance windows and things like that. Doing that in an OT environment is a challenge. If you try to patch an electrical grid, without having any impact, it's not very realistic. So, many are under the way of just, hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So, and the lifespan of anything in OT is like 10 to 15 years, whereas, you're dealing with a lot of legacy stuff, and, the environments themselves are, they're locked down. So, the IT environments are locked down to an extent, but it's important to have that network segmentation in place. Make sure that, you understand who's connecting to the environment and how, and ensuring that the appropriate, security controls are in place.
And so with OT, I mean, and anybody kind of jump in, Ryan or Pat, are there ways that they can test, the OT systems, while the OT systems are running? Like, you can't really shut them down, but is there a way to test them while they're running?
Yeah, so I'll just piggyback on Chris and answer your question. So in terms of testing, there's this really big movement to a concept called a digital twin, which is, essentially creating kind of replicas of the production environments in areas that allow you to do, whether it's data extraction or kind of testing and validation. Now, that being said, there's only so much that applies. If you're going to make a change to a production system, typically it has to be requalified or revalidated, depending on the industry you're in. They use different terminologies. But to Chris's point, if you're dealing with something on the electrical grid, right, and a change on a system can take it down, which means people don't have power. The prerequisites for doing anything are much higher than in IT, right? And so, again, typically that's called like qualification or validation. So to your question on, is it different? Does it need to be managed differently? Absolutely. And that is because you're going to have a much more heterogeneous set of infrastructure. To Chris's point, things 10, 15 years old, right? You're not going to see XP in a corporate IT environment, right? IT can just say, we got to get rid of it. Well, if that machine is attached to a robot that costs $1 million, well, unless that they can somehow upgrade that machine and have it still work with that robot, they're not going to do it, right? Mm-hmm. So it takes different tools to be able to manage that sort of environment, as well as different processes, because you have to recognize that you don't necessarily have the same authority or the same ability to just unilaterally make decisions on what happens on those computers because of the sensitivity to them and because of the potential impact on production. So what we see, most of our customers that are most successful in having a modern cybersecurity posture or really good hygiene from a cyber perspective in OT, they have dedicated stacks, separate stacks. So that doesn't mean they don't use any expertise or any of the learnings from IT, but it's taking the best practices, taking the expertise from the IT side, but then applying it rationally where it makes sense to OT, and also recognizing where it makes sense to deviate. So that's really the key to having a successful program. And to me, that's the culmination of this concept of IT-OT convergence, which has been going on for many, many years. The original kind of form of that was, well, let's try and make OT look like IT. And it caused a lot of friction between the two sides and a lot of issues. But now what we're seeing is the IT/OT convergence really means let's bring expertise from IT and expertise from OT to build a dedicated program that accounts for the best practices of both sides.
And that convergence, some data that I was reading a couple of weeks ago, that convergence, that market for IT/OT is going to exceed $1 trillion by 2030. Wow. It's about an 8 to 9% CAGR on that. And I would say if you do have XP in your environment, call Chris Daggett at HubTech.
Do people still have XP in their environment?
Oh, yeah.
Come on. Oh, my.
Well, the thing is, Adam, right?
I remember even a year or two ago, I remember seeing it at airports. You'd see like blue screens and it would have an XP logo and you say, oh, that's not
right. I mean, another thing, Adam, one thing to take into account, these OT devices are not necessarily connected to the internet. So they can run these legacy operating systems, as long as they're up, they're fine. They typically don't, patch them too often. And they're not susceptible to, these remote risks that IT is typically, susceptible to because it's in such an isolated environment. And there are controlled connectivity methods.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So changing it, I mean, we talked a little bit about this, but so Pat, like what industries are most reliant on OT? We talked about smart buildings and the utilities, but like, where do we see the majority of OT kind of living and the most reliance on it?
I mean, it's kind of the backbone of the US economy, right? It's what we manufacture, the stuff we make. So think all the factories, the assembly lines, but then drug manufacturing, chemical manufacturing, oil and gas production, power plants, everything from nuclear to coal to water, etc. Think of the healthcare industry, hospitals, but all those medical devices that they're plugging into to figure out what's wrong with you. Those are all part of the OT story. Transportation, railways, airports, logistics providers. How do UPS, Amazon, and FedEx make sure that all these packages arrive within 24 hours or less when you order them online? It's a significant amount of OT reliance there. Ryan mentioned this earlier, utilities, right? Water treatment plants, electrical grids, and you mentioned smart buildings. This is probably, I would guess, one of the fastest areas of growth is think of the fire systems, the security systems, think about municipal infrastructure. All these areas are really built on having a reliable, OT story in place. They're heavily reliant on operational technology capabilities.
So, when I think of IT, I think of all the hackers out there. I don't even know if I want to call it hackers, like threat actors, whatever you want, whatever the proper words are for them. But are people trying to hack into these OT systems, or are they trying to just more hack into the PCs and the servers more than they're trying to hack into these OT processes? I was just watching. I don't know. Did you guys ever see Mr. Robot? That is the weirdest movie. It's like a series. But I mean, they hack into everything. So are they breaking into this now, or is this harder?
Recently, Adam, there was a case on 60 Minutes. The town of Littleton in Massachusetts was actually their OT infrastructure was breached by China. And China was sitting in their OT environment for about 6 months, unnoticed. So it's a real thing that we're dealing with, and these businesses and municipalities, whatever the case may be, if anybody has OT in their environment, they really need to understand how they're connecting to it and how they're getting out. So there's risk everywhere at the end of the day.
The convergence of IoT into this OT story. I think you're in a Waymo or a Lyft or an Uber. You're in a self-driving car. That's something you want to make sure is not hacked, right? You want to get to the destination. Sure. You want to get there safely. And those are they what may have seemed as like outlandish thoughts just a few years ago are now things that these organizations have to take extremely seriously and have the right types of layered protection plans in place to make sure that the consumer.
Even with that, Pat, I don't know if I'm getting in a Waymo. I mean, that seems.
I took my first one in Phoenix last week. I felt very good.
They are phenomenal drivers.
Yeah,
they are
really
phenomenal drivers. I'm
going to let it mature a little bit before I go in there. But you actually did it. There was no driver.
No driver. You show up to the car, you get a notification on your phone. It drives right past you. It doesn't know who you are. Drives right past you. You click a button. It opens the door, unlocks the door. You get in. You press a button to go. It gives you some safety reminders. Tells you not to touch the steering wheel. And then 5 minutes later, I was at our office in Tempe, safe and sound, perfectly controlled temperature environment. I was able to, integrate my Spotify app to play my music in the ride over. It was a lovely experience.
There were no close calls, like people honking at you or anything?
No, all worked out.
Were you sitting in the actual driver's seat?
I sat in the back. I wanted to feel the real exclusive experience, like I was a very special rider.
Okay, I didn't mean to get out of the main topic, but I always see these things around town and I'm scared to death of them. But I don't think my kids are going to have to learn how to drive is really what I think this is all about. They're going to be just doing Waymos or getting driverless cars. So anyway, getting back to the OT. I mean, Chris, is this now a big part? And I don't want to just make this an advertisement for HubTech or Acronis, but is this like now a big selling feature? Like you're going in and marketing and selling that you'll help people with their OT?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a need out there for sure. And if, folks are not looking at their OT environments on a regular basis, to ensure that, things are locked down and, the appropriate access controls are in place and network segmentation and things like that, that's a major risk to not only, to the company, but to potentially, millions of people. It's a different day that we live in. There's a cyber war happening every day, all day, that people are not aware of. So they're casting a very wide net, and these IoT and OT devices that are out there, they've kind of been overshadowed in many cases from a security perspective than traditional IT is. There's been this big spotlight on cybersecurity and how it applies to IT, but it's really kind of status quo on the OT side of things. And with the IoT devices, nobody's really taken those into consideration as potential entry points for these hackers, because they're not getting secured.
Yeah, Ring doorbells, baby monitors, your refrigerator is now connected to the internet. There's a lot of entry points. It just the threat landscape continues to spread. The attack surface gets wider and wider every day as we advance in technology.
So without making it too much of a commercial, like we follow Acronis, and you guys are into so much stuff. What does Acronis do? Like, how do they help organizations with OT? Because I know you guys are all over backup and cyber protection and all that stuff, but is there a specific play for OT?
Yeah, well, Acronis helps our customers in a variety of ways, and being that we have been focused on this space for going on 15 years really gives us kind of some unique advantages. And so you reference the backup and restore. Without going into too much detail, Acronis really has market-leading capabilities for business continuity and fast recovery of industrial control systems. And this is played out by, we have partnerships with almost all of the leading industrial control system manufacturers, the big global automation vendors that make distributed control systems, SCADA, HMIs, and the different devices, right? And so there's a couple of reasons why Acronis has really become the default, beyond just how fast and easy it is for Acronis to recover these systems back to working condition. But because of our knowledge of the space and our understanding of the heterogeneous nature of these environments, we have maintained a very broad support for different operating systems and hardware types. And so most other vendors really have more of an IT lens, where they're thinking about it from the traditional IT perspective. So they're trying to get rid of support for old operating systems as fast as possible, because it makes their lives easier, right? And what that does to their end customers, then, if you're looking at an OT environment and you're a manufacturer that's got 50 plants and the life cycle of a lot of those systems are 10, 15, 25 years, you've got a lot of legacy stuff. And so when they look at other vendors, those vendors are covering 50, 60, 70% of their infrastructure, right? Meaning they've got large percentages of their platforms that are unsupported, right? Meaning they would have to come up with alternative manual processes for large portions of their infrastructure, whereas Acronis can cover pretty much all of it, the most of it. Now, you were surprised that you heard that the XP is out there. I still hear Windows 2000. I hear about random open VMS is one that I always like to talk about because I never heard of it before when a customer asked me about it. So we hear really legacy and really niche. So even Acronis may not do 100%, but if we can get 99% of your system covered, that means you're having to figure out a manual workaround on much fewer, where you can spend your time on automation, on the actual production of your good and optimizing your operations, not figuring out how to secure it. Let Acronis be that turnkey solution. And
wow, so that was a good plug for Acronis.
Yeah, I've been here about 17 years like Pat, right? So we've been around a long time. And then the only other topic that I think is really interesting, and we're seeing this more as kind of a more recent evolution of our utilization within these customers. A typical OT environment, a lot of these systems are sized to serve a specific purpose. So what I mean by that is the amount of memory, the amount of CPU, right, processing, RAM, all of that is really designed for the purpose that machine was intended for, not to run antivirus and your patch management and your backup and restore and your EDR and your remote desktop and all that other stuff, right? So the modern stack has become much more robust than it was, even 5-10 years ago, much less 20 years ago. And so Acronis's ability to deliver multiple services within a single agent utilizes a lot less resources on the machine, which impacts production a lot less. So we're starting to see that ability for Acronis to consolidate the stack into a single solution has also been appealing to a lot of our OT customers.
Okay, I mean that's great. So I'm glad you told us all about that. I try not to do that, but I think it's worthwhile for people to understand what Acronis does, and so thank you for explaining that. And so now here's a question for maybe Pat or Chris, whoever wants to jump on it. But we're like, so the big buzzwords are cybersecurity and AI. Where does AI fit into all this? Like, is there a play with AI and OT?
You want to go first, Chris? I got some stuff in my chamber here, but
Yeah, if you have some stuff in the holster, you can take it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely transforming the entire industry. It's transforming our way of life, right? Think about the things that we do today that will be automated in the future. So automation is certainly something that's going to help organizations streamline everything from repetitive tasks to very complex tasks for greater efficiency. So Ryan mentioned consolidation earlier. I think consolidation, automation are two areas where organizations are definitely going to see that transforming. Think about all the predictive capabilities that some of these, tools have, right? So using sensor data to predict when a machine is going to fail, understanding when a hard drive might be ready to fail. So I think the predictive type of capabilities that are coming out every day are going to really transform the business. You guys mentioned earlier about threat detection, right? Identifying either unusual patterns or behaviors that can indicate that a cyber attack is imminent or that a cyber threat is currently happening, or there's maybe operational issues that you need to address. So I think you'll see more advancements in terms of like real-time monitoring of those systems, the control systems, ICS, SCADA, or other OT devices or assets for different anomalies. You're going to be able to predict how to defend some of those machines where the potential failures or breaches might occur by analyzing historical data, but also the real-time live data that might be coming into those systems. And then you're going to see a lot, and we talk about this on a different side of our business, our MSP business, is really the automation of response. So agentic AI driving workflows that'll autonomously triage incidents. They'll check with the compliance requirements. They'll follow that disaster recovery plan that Ryan mentioned earlier. Hopefully it's not written on a sticky note and it's actually documented in the system. It can simulate attack scenarios. It can eliminate the need for some human intervention. All that comes with risk. All this stuff needs to be vetted out, right? If an OEM that we work with is looking to even just upgrade something in their operating system or move over to our new version of the software, I mean, Ryan can speak to this, it can take them 1 year to 2 years to validate that and test it very rigorously across the different components that they operate with. So For me, those are the main areas that we're already seeing some of these changes take place. And I'd say the last part is really AI forcing more of that conversation of pulling IT and OT together. You talk to some of these guys in the different departments within the same company a few years ago, there was not much communication happening between them. There's much more collaboration today, and you're seeing some of those processes, capabilities, best practices be imported to either side.
And something to just add on to that. So not even speaking to the AI, capabilities that maybe Acronis or HubTech has, but just the impact on the overall industry. So there's this concept called Industry 4.0. And it's basically a reference to the fourth industrial revolution, which is ongoing now. And what they mean by Industry 4.0 is essentially the utilization of AI or other tools to analyze big data. And in order to enable these Industry 4.0 initiatives, they have to do digital transformation to interconnect, whether it's an individual factory or their set of factories. This is the concept of smart factories. And so the legacy way of completely isolating the environments and having no sort of networking or communication doesn't really work when they need to be able to extract the data, to do analysis of your big data, to identify areas for optimization, right? So Industry 4.0 and the use of AI to analyze data to make better decisions, what that's doing is it's driving digital transformation initiatives to interconnect these different areas of their OT environments. And that's increasing the attack surface, right? That's creating more vulnerabilities in order to be able to derive the benefits of AI. And that creates a tremendous opportunity for a service provider community that can add expertise for these customers, right? And so as they increase their attack surface, they need to increase their investments in protection to be able to make sure that they're still as reliable in this new world. And so a customer previously that may have, they're just going to have their OEM come in, service that local network and leave. Well, they should still do that, but they also need to have someone centrally orchestrating an overall OT cyber approach to make sure that if something gets in here and now it has the ability to transition across their network or other areas, they can respond to that appropriately. So AI has almost driven a lot of other infrastructure changes to allow them to analyze and extract the data that is driving other investments in cyber hygiene within OT environments.
Cool. So,
and I think to add to that, one quick thing, from a compliance perspective, NIST has recently released some updated guidance on securing AI. And, I highly recommend that folks are, looking at that guidance and applying, these concepts to their OT environments. It's super, super important. At Hub, we're actually going through an exercise right now around that NIST guidance, and it's definitely brought up some food for thought, regarding adjusting things on our end. So.
Okay, well, I think you were talking about it a little bit. This might be a little bit of a naive question. So most of my questions are probably naive, but is there, when you go into enterprises or organizations, is there a separate IT team and a separate OT team, or is it just like one group together, or are they separated?
Depends.
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes the maintenance team would handle the OT stuff, and the IT stuff would be handled by, IT. But, now that, Ryan had brought to light that, things are merging together. And what I envision moving forward is IT is going to have a larger stake in, managing those environments and ensuring that they're secure and available.
So you see it evolving more to the IT professionals there will start to take on a bigger role.
Yep.
Okay.
At least that's my 2 cents. I don't know if the other guys agree or disagree.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I think it's really about taking the best practices that you get in IT in terms of proper enterprise IT service management and all the principles that go with it, but applying it in a reasonable, rational way to OT. So not just doing what you're doing on the IT side and doing it to OT, but you develop a set of OT practices that works for OT that you leverage as much of the principles from IT as possible. I mean, they want standardization, they want consistency as much as possible. That allows for scale, right? But the most effective OT programs recognize that you can't just lift and shift what you're doing over here and try and apply it to OT. You need to customize it. So
it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Yeah, it's taking that expertise and then modifying it to apply it in the new environment properly.
So I know the world is going to look a lot different in 5 and 10 years, but I mean, where is this thing going? What does the future of OT look like? I mean, 10 years, I'll probably be dead, so I don't know if it matters. But like say like in a few years, where is this thing going, guys? Start with Pat. Like, what does the future look like?
Well, I mean, I think you're seeing it in the current economy, right? You're seeing the jobs reports come out. You're seeing all these companies announcing all their AI initiatives, the huge investments in NVIDIA that's then wrapping around to ChatGPT and all these other organizations. So I think at some point you're going to start to see a drill down in terms of the actual efficiency and productivity gains, right? And that's number one. Number two, you're going to see a continued investment into reducing cybersecurity risks. So you're going to see organizations continue to talk about that convergence that Chris and Ryan were just speaking to, and needing to still have some of that required, intelligence on either side of the fence, whether it's IT or OT. And then you need to consider the impact on the workforce in general, right? I think in the next 5 years, AI is supposed to generate something like 170 million new jobs, but it's also going to kill somewhere between 90 and 100 million jobs globally, right? And some of those will be in IT, some of those will be in OT, because you'll see that convergence happen. So I think that economically is the major consideration that you need to play in here, and AI is a major driver of how companies are making decisions today and how they're able to leverage all of that, not just to produce their widgets in a more efficient, effective, less risky manner, but also in terms of how they sell them, how they market them. It's really a very quickly evolving time we're right now.
So with AI, and I don't want to just focus on AI, but with all this stuff potentially eliminating a lot of repetitive jobs, what would you guys recommend kids focus on and study in school? Because these entry-level jobs aren't really there, and I think they're suffering the most. I mean, that's a little bit of a political question, but what do you guys think? Like, where, if your kid's going to college now, or about to start college, what would you tell them to study?
Jump on that AI bandwagon. It's not going anywhere.
They've got to understand technology, right? And AI is now a standard part of that conversation around technology. And the speed at which it's evolving is only accelerated by AI and machine learning. So that's definitely an area. I think they need to be, it's a bit off topic, but they need to be financially educated, right? I think when we grew up, home economics wasn't really about home economics. It was about how do you make a pancake. Right. And I think there needs to be more of that financial education happening starting at a very early age. So kids understand the importance of that over the long term. But I think generally technology is something that kids need to be understanding and developing their brains around.
Okay. I was going to tell my kids to be drone pilots or something. I thought that would be interesting, but that's going to go away also.
We need drone pilots. AI will drive the drones. Yeah.
No, you're right. You're right. It's interesting. So it's like, what are these kids? I guess if they're not, if they don't understand technology, they're kind of screwed unless they want to become a plumber or something like that. Which
yeah, I mean, the trades are probably going to be one of the last impacted, I think, areas by that. But think of like digital marketing creation, right? That seems to be an area that's going to be quickly wound down. I think Coca-Cola this year had their Christmas commercial was done entirely by AI. They didn't use a single human other than the person asking the questions and the prompts to build it. So I think you'll see that type of rejection. Certain industries will be impacted faster and more dramatically, but over the long term, you're going to need those Elon transformer machines to come to your house and unclog your toilet for you. But that's, I think, another 10 to 15 years down the road.
Okay. So then with that, Let's go around the horn here, though. Like, so starting with Chris, what excites you the most about the future of OT, like and IT convergence? Like, so what do you see as the most exciting thing?
I think just the adoption of, AI, and, you're going to see more on a topic called quantum computing. That's going to be a big topic moving forward. And quantum computing is actually going to dwarf AI in many cases. So, these supercomputers that are coming out that are going to be readily available to folks, the level of automation and the amount of data processing and data mining, and that all will assist in providing great outcomes for businesses, and we'll be able to get to our desired state quicker. But it comes with a learning curve. Everybody's going to need to reskill, including everybody on this call. We will all leverage AI in one way, shape, or form to help with our job. And it's just going to get easier and easier, as we understand these tools. But, the evolution of AI is probably the big thing that I'm most excited about. It's really taken our industry and everybody's day-to-day lives by storm. It's a huge topic. We're all in the thick of it. We're all figuring it out together. There's a lot of opportunity around artificial intelligence and how it's applied to our day-to-day life.
Okay. Pat?
Yeah, I mean, all the stuff that Chris mentioned there is spot on. All of the all of this AI stuff that's happening, all the machine learning that's happening, it's creating massive amounts of data. And all that data needs to be protected. So for us, selfishly, Ryan, there's a reason why we've been here for so long, is because we see that opportunity. We see data exploding in growth, and the need to protect that data becoming a priority for organizations, specifically within OT. You're definitely seeing that they're becoming increasingly exposed to cyber risks, which creates an opportunity for us. It creates an opportunity for HubTech. It creates an opportunity for the workers, at those organizations to be ahead of the curve in terms of their understanding of what they need to do to protect it. So I think from that perspective, we're kind of in the right market to be able to capitalize on that. I think the OT cybersecurity market is supposed to be growing about 15, 16% over the next 5 to 6 years, which is obviously faster than the convergence is happening. So that to me is exciting, and that just creates opportunity. Whether or not AI is going to replace all of our jobs later, right now we have an opportunity to, I think, go and leverage it.
Yeah, I mean, ChatGPT became like my friend. It's my only friend at this point. It's really been nice to talk to. Always nice to me. Always super cool.
Always answers.
Yeah.
Doesn't talk back.
Well, it's just, no, Adam, you're a good guy. You're not a bad guy. So Ryan, what excites you the most?
Well, I referenced the Industry 4.0, fourth industrial revolution earlier, and all the possibilities that exist from it, the quantum computing, AI. I mean, ultimately, this is unlocking a new era of efficiency in production, and it has the potential to impact almost every single industry, right? So we may talk about how it impacts more efficiency in power production or manufacturing, but you just walk into a Burger King and now they've got kiosks instead of people taking your order, right? So the ability or the potential for it to impact like point of sale, those systems need to be protected. Smart cities, not just a building. Now, as they're building highways, they have sensors where they can monitor the traffic, right? And they can analyze if we change things here or there, how is that going to impact traffic flows? So all of this IoT and smart computing needs compute behind it. And then they're running applications to analyze it. And those applications need to be protected, right? So I believe all of these trends are going to drive both an increase in infrastructure that needs to be protected, and more important, infrastructure that they're going to protect because of the cost if it goes offline. And so I think this is a great space to be in, as not only do we have great technology and great partners, but we're in a great space where we're going to be able to ride that wave of growth for the foreseeable future.
Cool. So with that, we're going to have to start wrapping it up, guys. We really appreciate everything that you guys have been talking about. I think it's an important topic. I think it's super interesting, and you guys are saving the world, protecting the world, and we really appreciate your advice today. I also wanted to make sure that the folks that are listening understand that Acronis is a great partner of HubTech, and they're also sponsoring this. So thank you very much for today's help. And we wanted to play a quick 15-second video, and then we're going to end it. So if we can get that teed up, Maria, it would be great.
People can go crazy trying to stop a cyber attack. Acronis, take the headache out of IT security.
Wow, awesome commercial. So thank you very much, and let's keep on going and growing.
Thanks for having us, Adam.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond the Firewall podcast powered by HubTech. If you found this conversation useful, follow or subscribe wherever you listen to stay updated on new episodes. For more information about HubTech's IT solutions and services, please visit hubtech.com.